Hey guys, it's Sean again, back with part 2 of my video review of Sam's play at 25nl on PokerStars. And if you didn't watch the first part of the video, make sure you go back and watch that. There'll be some, somewhat relevant reads on some of the villains at the table. Um, so I guess without further ado, we will dive in and see what's happening. Um, in the first part of the video, we covered the HUD, VPIP, PFR, 3-bet, fold to 3-bet on the top line, and hopefully we'll just get into a couple spots here. And I'm gonna skip ahead just a few seconds, see if we can find anything. Here we go. A couple possibilities coming up. With King Jack suited on table 3, I think this is a fine spot to flat or 3-bet. I think both are very, very reasonable. 3-bet is obviously very good. Flatting would be okay, and normally we don't flatten the small blind with a lot of hands that we would want to, just because the big blind is going to squeeze or come along, and then we're out of position in a multi-way pot. However, in this case on table 3, the guy that was in the big blind is 16-12, pretty nitty, 5% 3-bet, so he's basically just going to stay out of our way. For the same reason, at this table, we're just going to be able to open super wide in the cutoff because he's going to stay out of our way. He's not going to 3-bet us. He's not going to flat us. He's just going to let us do what we want. So on table 3, we're just, we should be pretty wide. Just in general, we should be opening wide as well as flatting wide when this guy's behind us, wider than we normally would. Interesting spot, table 1. Sam decides to flat, or just decides to complete, and I think that's pretty reasonable. Basically he's worried about raising and then c-betting into a guy that doesn't fold, and yeah, that's pretty reasonable plan of action there. So we do a flopper set, and yeah, we should just try to put a lot of money in. Let me back it up here. VOC had just a bit of lag. All right, yeah, so we limp and we call. We obviously have to call, and we flopper set. Let's see what happens on the flop. All right, so he checks it back, and we go ahead and lead, which I think is correct. We don't want to give him a chance to check back a 6 or a 9 again that might call, and I think we should just go ahead and bet call the river. Yeah, and he snap folds. Okay, so we don't get paid off there. It's a shame. Sorry about that stuff popping up in front of the screen, guys. I wanted to bring over Sam's HUD because I didn't remember exactly what was on the second line. So on the second line, c-bet, turn c-bet, fold to c-bet, and steal, which makes me think that we should have. It's a very, very small sample, but it looks like our fish was actually folding to c-bets pretty well, 60% over the small sample. So I do like. I actually changed my mind. I do like raising the pocket fives and expecting, the villain to fold to our c-bets often enough. And just if I haven't covered it in the previous part of this video, when you're c-betting about 2/3 pot, we only need the villain to fold 40% of the time. So if you have a guy that's folding 60% of the time, they're folding a ton of the, so you're going to make a ton of money just based on your c-bets. And with pocket fives, your hand has some inherent value as well. It's possible. It's possible that pocket fives wins at showdown unimproved, and also when you flop a set, you're pretty willing to play a big pot. Okay, and then with pocket queens here, it looks like we squeeze, but we only squeeze to like 3.2x, and I would prefer just squeezing to the full 4x here at $3. Probably won't make a huge difference, but we do have a guy who's relatively passive. who's somewhat likely to call. And what we don't want to happen is have this hand go three-way to the flop, which does end up happening. But if the smaller you squeeze, the more likely it is to just go call, call, all right? Which is not the worst thing in the world because we have a very good hand, but queens plays much, much better heads up in position than it does, in position in a three-way pot. So, yeah, I don't like the sizing. I just go to the full $3. And if everybody folds, that's actually a really good result. It's not a terrible thing when when we squeeze with queens and we pick up, 75 cents plus a quarter. So, we pick up almost a full $2 if everybody folds of dead money. And that's actually a pretty darn good result. And flop comes out horrendous, ace, king, three. Either one of these guys is very, very likely to have an ace or a king. And also, if we check back after it checks to us on the flop, it's pretty unlikely that they're going to stab without at least an ace or a king in their hand. If they have pocket sevens, they're not going to stab the turn and try to make us fold. They're just going to check it down. So I think Sam's play is perfect. Checks back the flop and then gives up when the guy, bets 2/3 on the turn. Table 3, we're opening versus the nit. In this spot, I'd be opening literally any two cards. He's just so tight that I think that I can probably open 2-3 offsuit versus him because he'll just fold. And we flop top pair, obviously c-betting for value. Get called by 7-8 suited, queen 10, jack 10 suited, queen jack, ace 9 suited, hands like that. Another interesting spot going to develop on table 4 possibly. On table 3, this is a spot where I find a lot of students getting confused as to what to do because now they're up against a nit and the board's getting a little bit scary. And then they're like, well, should I just check call? Should I check fold? Should I bet call, bet fold, etc.? And the answer is you should just bet fold because we crush most of his range still. Right, like this 7 improved very, very few hands in his range. 10-8 suited is about the only hand he can have that just improved. And so he'll call us with all sorts of, like if he has 7-8 suited pre-flop, he's definitely going to call us again because now he's picked up a straight draw to go with his pair. The same goes for a hand like 9-10 or 8-9 suited, jack 10 suited. All of those hands are calling again. So it's a pretty clear value bet. And this type of guy does not appear to be the type of guy who's going to raise with 7-8. So I would just bet fold, and a pretty easy bet fold. On table 4, we have a guy that appears to be this Antlers guy. He's 47/18 over a pretty small sample, but definitely appears to be aggro fishy. I much prefer 3-betting here for value than flatting. And again, we have a hand that doesn't really want to go multi-way. We have multiple guys behind us that are likely to put money in the pot. We also have one guy that's 31/26 over the small sample that is somewhat likely to squeeze. And, taking king jack offsuit multi-way is bad, and getting squeezed off our hand is also bad. And when you have a villain that's, almost 50 VPIP with 20% PFR, he's likely to call our 3-bet with all sorts of, king 8 suited, jack 10, all sorts of crap. So, yeah, I think good spot to value 3-bet. The key to value 3-betting a hand like king jack offsuit versus one of these fish is understanding that when if villain were to 4-bet, it's a very clear, very, very easy fold. I mean, just when you make this 3-bet, you know that you're folding to a 4-bet instantly because very few guys, even really, really aggressive fish, very few guys 4-bet bluff nearly often enough that we can do anything about it with king jack off. The other key is being able to play it post-flop and navigate some post-flop spots, but just the 3-bet pre-flop and c-bet and take it down aspect of the 3-bet makes it a pretty good spot to 3-bet. Plus, when you flop top pair, you can be pretty confident that as long as he doesn't raise you at all post-flop, you can just bet shove for value. And that would be my plan. If he check raises, depending on how the board plays out, like if I were to flop a jack or a king, depending on how the board played out, a check raise may or may not be something to get folded, that you would fold to. It depends on the specific situation. On table 3, I think it's really clear check fold on the river. I think we're going to check, and if he has his beat, he'll bet, and if he doesn't, he'll take the showdown. And that's exactly what happens. On table 4, so anyway, so I was talking in La La Land where we 3-bet pre-flop, which we didn't do. As played, we flat, and the other guy that appears to be somewhat fishy, possibly just an aggro reg, but we don't know for sure. He looks to be somewhat fishy. He decides not to donk the flop, which is important. And the fish decides not to c-bet. So when everybody checks to me here, I'm probably going to stab. And I'm just going to stab half pot. All I want them to do is fold their total air. Right? Because if I just check, then everybody's going to get a free turn card, and we're just going to have to check down and hope king high wins, which is very, very unlikely. And so I would just stab half pot when it checks to me. And if somebody calls, I'm going to shut down unless I turn a king or a jack. Yeah, and when they check twice, I'm definitely going to bet. But I think we missed a bet on the flop. Just for what it's worth, as far as like a range type thing, there's no hand in our range other than pocket fours and flush draws that really can like check back the flop and then bet the turn. So like our line looks kind of full of shit. They probably won't care because they just have air themselves, so they just have to fold anyway. But this line is a lot less credible than betting the flop. And we get check called by the PFR. And I actually think that we can check back the river here, and king high just wins a lot. I think if we bet and he has a 4, he's never folding. If he has ace high, he may or may not fold. We don't really know. But if he has like 9-10 or the the queen 10 of spades, we beat all those hands at showdown. So I would just take the showdown and be okay with it. On table 2, big fish limps and folds to us in the big blind. Pretty clear value raise with king 10 out of position. I'd make it, $1.25 here. So a missed spot there, I think. Yeah, so Sam decides to bet here, and I think that as long as he's betting only to try to make the villain fold ace high, and he thinks the villain can fold ace high, then it's an okay bet. But I don't think, if we're betting to try to make this guy fold any pair, I think it's pretty bad. So the motivation behind the bet here is important. But I just think given that we can actually win at showdown, I would just take the showdown. And the fact that I'm not entirely sure this guy always folds ace high. Like when he folds, I think most of the time he just says 9-10. So he's tanking. Looks like he probably does have ace high on table 4. And he did fold it. This is a pretty clear isolate on table 4. He goes to 5x instead of 4x, which is pretty good. Makes it more likely to go heads up. And our friend comes along. I think it's a pretty easy board just to c-bet once, and if he check calls, very, very likely to have an ace. It's not a board that we expect to be check called by a hand like pocket 8s or 10s or 6s. We have the queen of hearts. We know where the king of hearts is. Not a whole lot of flush draws you can have combinatorically. If you guys don't understand combinatorics, I may have mentioned this in the last video too, but if you don't understand combinatorics, I'm probably going to make a video about some of the basics of it, but it's something that you need to understand. And you don't have to be able to do the math at the table and figure out exactly how many combos, of each possible holding everybody has, but you need to understand the basics. And like in this spot it applies because it's just really hard for him to have a flush draw if he's playing any type of somewhat reasonable range. he can only have like 8, 9, 9, 10 suited, Jack 10 suited. And now you're talking, he ends up having, you know, 4 to 8 combos of flush draws most of the time that don't contain the ace. So when he check calls, his hand is like 90% of the time an ace, uh, unless he's the type to float, Jack 10 offsuit here, which some fish would, but until we know that they're floating incredibly wide like that, I would just bet once and give up when called. It's nice to have some equity as well. So, we do get called, and I would just take my free card here, and bink. Yeah. Villain checks, I'm just going to bet kind of a normal size. Somewhere around half pot, maybe slightly larger. I probably wouldn't bet quite $4, but just because I think his range for not leading the river is king X's and weak ace X's. If he had a larger, if he had like 2 pair or a strong ace X, I would expect him to lead the river himself. So I'd probably go like half pot or a little bit more than half pot to keep it small enough to get called by the weak portion of his range. Okay, let's see what happened on table 2. Missed something. Okay, yeah, so we're a little bit deep. We decide to flat, and there's a fish in the blinds, makes it an easier flat because he's really likely to come along. We have a hand that plays pretty decently in position, strong speculative hand. And I'm just going to pause the video for just a second. Okay, and we're back. So it checks to us on table 2. This is a spot where I don't really expect to be called by worse a ton, except for by the fish, who definitely can call us with all sorts of gut shots and flush draws and all sorts of stuff. But it is a spot where I expect to have the best hand really often when the regular and the big blind decides not to lead a wet board like this. It's pretty unlikely he has a queen. A lot of regulars would lead out here with a queen, especially if they're targeting the fish for value. Yeah, I don't expect him to have a queen, and when the c-bet or when the PFR doesn't c-bet, he almost never has a queen or a flush draw or king jack or anything along those lines. So if we bet, we can be certain that maybe 75% of the time or more we get a fold out of both of the regs. And the fish is going to call with worse, call with better, but it puts us in a much better situation to bet and either take it down now or see the flop heads up versus, or see the turn heads up versus a fish. So I think some people would be tempted to check here, but I think it's a pretty clear bet. Okay, so this is an interesting spot. We get check called by this Aphrodite reg, which is really strange. You wouldn't expect him to check call here with almost any hand. In theory, a competent, aggressive opponent is going to be leading here with king jack, jack 9, flush draws, queen X, right? And he probably wouldn't, given the board texture, he probably would not check call with a hand like ace 10 because it's multi-way. And the board is going to develop in a way that is really tough for 10x to play out of position versus aggression. So what I would, however, he did decide to check call. So my assumption is that he doesn't have a set, and he doesn't have queen 10, and he doesn't have a really big draw. If he had ace jack of spades, I would expect a lead or a check raise, like for sure, even from a more passive opponent. So now my plan is actually to just continue to barrel. I think that he could possibly call the flop with a hand like king jack, without the flush draw. And on this turn, unless he has the spade, he's going to fold. I think he could call it with a weaker queen. And if we continue to barrel, he's going to fold. So I would actually plan on probably just 3-barreling here. And like on the turn, it's like it's kind of for value because he can possibly call with a king jack with a spade in it, jack 9 with a spade in it. But On the river, it's just a pure bluff. So I would either check down from here on out, in which case I'm going to lose a lot, or I'd just turn my hand into a bluff on the turn, because I don't. This guy's range just has to be really weak for him to play the hand the way he did. It's just really, really tough for him to have a flush, given the way he played. So I would either give up now or three barrel. I think three barreling would be extremely strong. If this guy donks, it'll be super interesting, and we'll just fold because I wouldn't know how to interpret it. So and snap checks back. One thing I would suggest is never snap doing anything, simply because if this guy did happen to have Jack 9 or King Jack, there's a possibility if we like tank for a little while on the turn and then we check, there's a possibility that he checks the river to us and then we can just win at showdown, that every once in a while. But when we snap check, it's a lot more likely that villain will fire the river and try to take us off our hand, because our hand looks weak when we snap check. Yeah, and as play we kind of have to fold, but I really, really prefer a three barrel there. Hopefully I didn't miss any hands on any other tables, but that was a really interesting hand. If I did, I apologize, guys. Alright, let's see. No action here. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Oh, got ace queen. Cool. Yeah, so this is a relatively new table. We only pulled it in, I don't know, 5-6 hands ago. And yeah, so we raise blind, lose blind, c-bet, the guy folds. Not much to talk about there. On this table, it looks like this one guy, Bo Bliff, I can't even read his name. He looks like super nit. We have about 80 hands on him. He's 12 VPIP, so he looks nitty. We have another guy that's a short stacker, and I'm pretty sure he is a pro shorty, just based on his stats, 29, 24 with a 15% 3-bet. I would assume he's the type who's going to be jamming a ton over our opens. He's also going to be folding a ton. And then the other guy we don't know much about is this Spaceman. He's called us twice, and we know very little about him other than that he is 200 big blinds deep. I think Sam's c-bet against an unknown villain with some equity is fine. I think when we totally brick off on the turn, we should just give up. The guy bet super small, but we can't do anything about it. We just check fold. Well played. Okay, now we know something about our villain. He limps, so he's definitely a fish. And on this board texture, it's pretty clear, just lead for full pot. And just keep leading for pot. This guy has, just, by the way, some people might be tempted to lead smaller on this turn because of the king, and like now it's going to scare the villain off of his queens or whatever, which I guess has some merit, some logical merit, but the problem is he has a lot of kings in his range, king jack, king 10, king x of clubs. He's still not going to fold a queen. If he has queen jack or queen 10, he's certainly not folding for full pot. If he has any type of flush draw, he's not folding. So yeah, pretty easy spot just to continue bombing it. And Sam bet's pretty big here, but I would have just potted it again. This river is interesting as well. It completes some hands. Jack 10 obviously had us beat the whole way, but now 10-7 got there and flush draws got there, which does two things. One, it possibly completes his hand if he was drawing to a flush or 10-7, and it also makes the board a little bit scarier looking. So on this river, I actually would back down my bet size. I'd probably go something like 230. And then basically I'm targeting hands like king jack, king 10, and queen jack that doesn't feel like folding, hands like those. Yeah, so 230, 240, somewhere in there, and pretty clear fold if he raises. Yeah, it looks like Sam goes right in that range, and our villain snap folds. So when he snap folds, my assumption is he had some type of hand like 9-10, some type of 9x hand. most likely one that picked up a gut shot on the turn. Okay, sorry I had to pause the video again. I apologize for having to do that a few times, but all right. Let's back it up and see what happened on table 2. Okay, so 2319 isolates out of position versus the pretty big fish. In theory, he should have a pretty strong range here. However, King Queen is also a pretty strong hand, and playing multi-way with a 65 VPIP fish is going to be plus EV, and everyone's deep. So just super easy call. Yeah. By the way, if we're villain, we should be isolating larger there. One, because our range is pretty strong. Two, because of the, playing big pots against a fish when you have a strong range is just plain good. So I would be isolating to, $1.25 or $1.50, depending on how far I felt like I could take it before the fish started to react. Sam decides to lead here, and I don't like it. I'm assuming what he's doing is he doesn't want a check call, which I think is good. I think if you check here, you should check fold. But our villain looks pretty passive. I think he will check back a fair amount. I think when you lead here, what happens is just you get called by the fish really often. Now the fish might fold, but you get called by the fish really often, and we end up check folding turns. So we're just kind of like bloating the pot to check fold later. If his plan is to like value bet multiple streets, I think that gets extremely thin at best, and probably just minus EV. Like if he's just barreling, multiple streets for value. Pocket 7 table, or Jack 7. Oh, never mind. So Jack 7 on table 1, so good fold. And the pocket queens on table 2. And we're going to put money in the pot, and depending on what happens. Yeah, like in this spot, 1, our villain is super nitty, so 3 betting doesn't make a ton of sense. And 2, let's not blow the huge fish out of the pot. Let's just flat. Don't do it. Don't 3-bet. Just call. Just call. Yeah, problem is the villain's too nitty. Alright. Oh. Superfish just snap calls, which is nice. And now I would just bet something like 450. Yep. Good. And just continue betting. And if the guy ever raises, I'm folding. Because this guy appears to be very, very passive, and I don't think he'll bluff raise this, and I don't think he'll raise this to find out where he's at with a 7. So, I think that was the first time he cold called a 3-bet. If he did that in the previous video and I forgot about it in between, because I recorded these videos several days apart. If he did that in the previous video, if we'd already seen him cold call a 3-bet, I really like the 3-bet because, this fish obviously doesn't care. If we had not seen him do that before, especially when there's a nit, a nit opening, I would not be 3-betting the queens. I would be flatting. And so Sam was thinking about 4-betting there, and he decided not to. I didn't have enough time to see the pop-up, but I assume we made a pretty decent decision there. It's a spot where you could 4-bet. It's a spot where you could fold. Both are very reasonable, just depending on what you know about the villain. I think given depth of stacks, that we're almost 200 big blinds deep effective, I think that would make me a little bit more likely to 4-bet than normal. But I think that folding is also very, very reasonable. Table 1, we open, get called by kind of aggressive fish guy, and I would check fold this board. We have no equity when called. other than our 2 overcards, which are only going to hit about 12% of the time. And it's a board where aggressive villains are relatively likely to, I'm going to pause it, where aggressive fishy villains are likely to float and or bluff raise us, or make little min finding out where they're at value raises. Yeah, so it's just a board where I don't think we get a ton of folds. Let's see what's going on here. He pulled open a hand history. We opened and everybody called, and board was terrible, and we check folded to a super small bet, and this guy kept betting super small. And showed up with king 10. So he just kind of like stabs the flop with air, and then like gay bets the turn again just because he has a pair and he doesn't want to check. And then on the river, his bet sizing goes up because he improved. So yeah, good hand to take a note of. Pause it, back it up just a hair. See what happened pre-flop with this ace-queen. Okay, so it looks like this Neoport opened. This is a spot where I actually, given that we have seen this fish just cold call a 3-bet, this is actually a spot where I kind of like 3-betting myself. Again, no export either has to like call us out of position or fold, either of which he's not making money. You know, he's at a disadvantage to us. And the other option is to put in an expensive 4-bet when he opens under the gun and we 3-bet him from middle position. So, you know, he's not in a great spot. So if like we 3-bet here and everybody folds to him, he's pretty often like we're just going to make money off him. He's usually just going to fold. But given that we've seen, you know, our 66 VPIP fish just cold call a 3-bet and then snap fold the, you know, a 10-10-7 board, I would like the 3-bet here, and if the fish cold calls, then we're in good shape. If the fish folds, then we're in good shape. Like there's just a lot of good things that happen when we 3-bet here. So yeah, I would 3-bet. I know that sounds contradictory to when I was like, oh, don't 3-bet the pocket queens, but a couple things have changed since then. One, you know, the pre-flop opener is much different. It's a guy that's much more aggressive and a guy that we're much deeper with. And also now we know some more information about our, you know, super fish. And table 1, pretty clear fold. I'm assuming we opened and he min raises the flop. Table 2, just keep betting. You got a really strong hand, you know, trips with a flush draw. Just keep betting and betting big. Probably go 5 something here. Yeah, I think we should go bigger. I think Sam is maybe a little bit worried about running into a flush, maybe a little worried that his bet will scare off the fish. But I think the fish has quite a lot of hands with ace-x in them that are just never, ever, ever folding. And I think he also has quite a lot of hands that have some type of diamond in them. You know, like if he has pocket tens with a 10 of diamonds, things like that, they're just never folding. So I bet very large on the turn. And I would also bet pretty large on the river, somewhere in the $12 range, and fold to a shove. In fact, I think if he shoved, he would have a full house 100% of the time. Yeah, I think we're missing a little bit of value with our bet sizing, both on turn and river here, because we need to be targeting ace-x hands, which are the most likely hands that like call us no matter what bet size we make, and those are calling much, much larger bets. And he called pocket jacks, which is kind of crazy, and I'm not sure that it had anything to do with the bet size. I think that more had to do with the fact that he had pocket jacks and was annoyed that the board ran out the way it did. Okay, looks like the video's over. So, yeah, that was kind of a cool hand to end on. We did win a big pot, but I would have preferred larger bet sizing on turn and river, and I certainly don't think that pocket jacks hands folds on the turn for a larger size. There's some possibility that a bigger river bet size, a big turn followed by a big river bet size makes him fold jacks. But the speed of with what she called on both streets makes me think he's just not folding that hand anyway. And like I said, we should really be targeting ace-x type hands more so than pocket jacks, which are never folding to any bet size. So yeah, shoot me an email, Sean at version2poker.com if you have questions about the video. And I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Later, guys.